All right. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the fourth session of the Flutter Development series by GDSC Heriot-Watt University. GDSC stands for Google Developer Student Clubs, and we're a Google-sponsored club that's open to everyone. My name is Fahim, and I'm a core team member in GDSC. I'm a fourth-year student in Heriot-Watt University, studying computer science and specializing in data science. I'm joined by Vishan today, and I'm going to allow him to introduce himself.
So hi everyone, my name is Vishan. I am also a fourth-year computer science student specializing in data science. I'm also one of the core team members at GDSC at HWU. So the agenda today, so this is going to be the third session, where we will be covering the remaining two labs from the development course, the Flutter Development course. That'll be Lab 4, which is basically on setting up a Firebase Authentication flow with your Flutter front-end app, which I will be covering, and Fahim will cover like a dot function setup with your front-end Flutter application. And at the end, we will have a Q&A session. So let's get right into that. So let's move on. Okay, so it's going to be the fourth lab. So what's happening today at the fourth lab? It's going to be setting up a Firebase backend with your front-end Flutter projects. So if we covered in the first session, we talked about backends and how you can connect them to your Flutter apps. One of them that we mentioned was Firebase, and this lab is pretty much going to be covering that. But from the available services that Firebase has, we're going to be setting up one of their authentication packages. So I should also note that this lab mainly focuses on setting up that authentication flow, and we will not be writing Flutter front-end code from scratch. Most of the code is already provided to us. And again, so basically the main focus is just setting up Firebase. So the overview is pretty much the same old from all the labs. But again, the main thing is that we'll be setting up a Firebase meetup application, where the application will demonstrate how to use Firebase Web Authentication in a Flutter application. Right. So you learn how to set up a Flutter app that looks like that has natural iOS and Android and the web. Basic structure for Flutter app, and the basics for Firebase, which is pretty much the new concept for today. And again, from Firebase, we'll be covering the authentication flow. So the setup, just like previous labs, you need to open up your Google Cloud resources. So that you'll get like temporary login and password to do that. Before we do that, let's open up the editor. So we can start it. Again, you will need your subscription, so this is something that has to be done monthly. With that, you can then use your Google Cloud resource without having to give any money to them. You can just use your subscription that we can provide. So as you can see, you can start that. So let's open up the ID. So if everyone remembers the VS Code ID that happens on the browser, we're going to open that. So let's copy that. While that's loading, we'll just go through the next instructions. So for this app, again, because most of the front-end code is already given to us, we're just, like the previous lab, we're just going to clone it from one of their repositories. So I think so let's zoom in. From there, let's clone repository. So you can see the instructions for that. So let's click the source control button. So we just click the project files in the Explorer, clone repository, and then we need to give a URL for that. You can get the code from this repository now. And just click enter. It's asking us where to actually like store those files. We're just going to put in this directory. And that's what they want us to do. Yep. So we're going to put in the Flutter directory and just press OK. Wait for that to clone. So we're just going to close this because this repository is the main one, so it contains a bunch of Flutter files for a bunch of their labs that they have. So we just need a specific one, so we'll manually go into that subfolder. So we can that's what they want us to do, just dismiss that. From there, let's get the specific folder. That's the code that we need for our Firebase Web Authentication app. So let's open up the Explorer again and move to this directory. So open the folder. So we go to Flutter, leave its Qwiklabs and Firebase get to know. So Qwiklabs, go Firebase get to know Flutter, and I think it's step 2. Yep, step 2. Okay, let's get that. Click OK. Wait for that to load. For us, we didn't have to use the Flutter create command like last time, so we're just basically just cloning some starter code. As you can see, it's allowing us to know. So if anyone remembers, again with packages, we have to update our dependencies with the PubSpec YAML file. Again, because we just need to update those dependencies. So I'm just going to open up the terminal. And if you remember from last time, we just do flutter pub get. Do that. And that will just update all our dependencies in the PubSpec file. And as you can see, those errors go away. That's that. You can do this with one of the UI elements, but it's easier to use the command line. From there, we're going to, they're telling us to move into that directory. So let's just ensure the terminal, yep, we are in the step 2 folder. So from there, we can cover the code. So again, this code is broken down into a few files. So you have the main file, which is like the entry point to the app. Then you have a widgets file. So in order to just improve the workflow of like building the front end, it's kind of just abstracted into different widgets, so different sections. So the body, the login elements, that's all broken down into different files. But the main file that we'll be editing is the authentication file. So that's where we're going to be adding the different auth states for users. So when they're logged in, if they're logged out, if they're an existing user, etc. And the index.html file, so that's just where we're going to add the web configurations. Again, this is meant to be a Flutter web app. So we just need to add some settings that kind of link our Flutter project to our Firebase backend. And those settings is where we'd edit it in that file. All right, so let's just run the server. So just like previous labs, we've used the wr command. We'll wait for this to set up a connection, and then we can open up the URL. While that's happening, I'll just copy the live server link because we're going to need that. All right, let's just do a refresh just to ensure that everything is set up properly. We're going to open up the server. We need another tab. Give this a minute to load. And we should have the starter app in place for us. There you go. So that's the Meet app. If you're wondering why the image is like centered, it's actually meant for an app on mobile devices. So I'll just minimize the tab. That way it looks a little better. So if I just scale it down a bit, yeah, it looks like more like something that should be on a mobile phone. So there you go. So all it is just a simple Meetup app. So it's kind of giving the date and just the location of where it's happening. And there will be like a RSVP button that you can use to sign up. That'll, once we finish the authentication code, that will just kind of get that to kind of be visible. It's a button they've already implemented for us, but we need to just update the code to get that widget and display that. That'll be done during the lab, and then just some text about what's happening during that event. So let's start setting up our Firebase backend. So to get started, you need to create a Firebase project. Let's open up a new incognito window. I will have to sign in. Okay, let me use a different account. All right. So we'll sign in using the credentials that we have, so the Google Cloud one. I'm just going to copy the username. Where is it? Right. Use a new one. Use another account. That. Then I'm going to copy the password. There you go. Just accept the terms and conditions. And we've logged into our Firebase portal. So from here, we can create more Firebase projects which you can link to different apps. So that's that. So let's start setting up the project. So we're here. It should automatically recognize that we have a Google Cloud instance running. So we're just going to give that ID. can accept the conditions and continue. We're going to use the Blazepan. So they have, it's basically a paid service, but they have a free tier that to some extent you can utilize to get a pretty decent app working, like a nice prototype. But at some point, once you get your data limits, they will charge you. But as long as you don't do that, you should be fine. And even for just this temporary app that should be just up for like an hour, it'll be fine. Just click confirm, click continue. We'll disable analytics for this lab because we don't really need it. And then Firebase, so let's add that. Should create our project. If there's anything else that we need to do, click add Firebase and click continue. So now that the project is ready, just continue from there. And there you go, we've created a Firebase backend. That's all you have to do is just set it up. But now that we've set it up on Firebase, we actually need to link this to our Flutter application. So if we continue from there, as you can see, the options that they have for us. So we can to set up for different platforms, there's different settings that you need to do. But in our case, it's going to be a web app. So we'll do the web app settings. So from there, we'll give it a name. I believe they want us to give a specific nickname, even though it doesn't matter, but it's fine. We'll just use it. We don't need to set up hosting for this, and we're just using the debug, the live debugger. We don't need to set up any hosting. That's fine. Set up the app, and we should get some configuration. So, yeah, there we go. If you're doing this lab, do not copy this. It's just like an example. You need to copy the keys that they give you over here. That's how you're going to get the correct links with your application. So let's just copy that. And from there, you can see that get to know your Firebase for Flutter on the web. So here's an existing configuration, which is accessible by the project overview. Select the app creator, select to see the details specified. Click the cog and scroll down the page to review the SDK configuration script. Okay, we've done that. That should be fine. Click continue the console. All right, let's do that. Just continue the console. We don't need that anymore. Click authentication and get started. Okay. So for this app, we're going to set up just a simple email login. And you can see this is some of the other features that you can get with Firebase. So for example, we're going to be working with the authentication setup, but for example, Firestore is kind of like a backend service to store data. If anyone's familiar with like SQL, that's kind of how it's designed. But we won't be needing that for this. So let's get started. And you can see you can set up multiple ways in order to verify a person on an app. But for this, we're just going to use like an email and password. So just click that. Let's enable it and save. Now, this doesn't mean that you have like an email and password working with your app. You still need to set up a lot of configuration stuff, which we will do. But now, at least all this is doing is just enabling it on your Firebase project. So from there, we save that. So now let's actually start setting up the connection with that backend service. So in this section, we're going to update the Flutter application and add the RSVP button. This is already designed for us. We just need to set up the code and call that class, and it should display it. That registers people using Firebase Authentication. So go back to the editor, find the web folder, and expand it to reveal the index.html file. Click the file and replace the body section with the Firebase script shown below. So let's copy that. I'll briefly explain what's happening. So all we're doing is we're just getting different dependencies for the web app. So we're going to use Firebase, and from that, we're going to use authentication. We are importing Firestore, but I'm pretty sure we don't need it because we just need to set up an email and password login, but it's fine. And from there, we're just, once we've set up our configurations, this will be, remember the keys that we copied earlier, that's what we add here. So like an API key and stuff. Once we've added that, we have to replace that code into this block here. Then we can initialize the app by just calling this function, and that should set up just the connection between our project and the app. And then we still need to design the auth flow for like checking the user's current state. That'll be a part later on. So once we've done that, let's just go and paste this in our folder. I copy that. Okay. Right, that's in web. So this is in our web folder, the HTML file. I believe we just have to replace the body. Yep. Just remove the body tags and replace it with the ones they told us to. So just click Control S to save it. And from there, let's add our API keys and other IDs that we need. Let's not use this because, again, this is just an example. We need to use the ones that they give us. So just to get it a little bit easier, I'll just click on the settings icon here, then project settings. If you scroll down, you should see those IDs as well over here. Or if you copied it earlier, you can, but just in case you forget, you can do it from here. I'm just going to highlight that, copy it, go back to our code, which should just be inside that code block. So we'll just replace this part over here. All our keys, and just click Control S just to save it. From there, we've updated the body, so now we have a connection with our Firebase app. Again, this is a straightforward process. If it looks complicated, it isn't, because it's almost the same thing every time, except obviously every time you make a different project, you will get different keys. And that's the only thing you need to change, at least with a Flutter web app. If you want to read the documentation again, you can use the link here. Okay, so from there, we can move on. So we don't need to edit anything in the HTML file anymore. Let's open up the main file, because now that we've kind of added the dependencies, we still need to import that code into our dot files to add the authentication flow. So this is the imports that they want. So we're going to use Firebase core, and the main import that we need is the authentication one. So let's just copy that and replace it with these imports. You can see there's some red lines. And the reason for that is because we need to add these dependencies specifically in our PubSpec file. Just to show you, where, if I'm not sure where it is it? It's not PubSpec, yeah, PubSpec YAML. So you can see here, so the dependency that we had earlier was the Google Fonts one, but once we use the Flutter pub get command, that will fetch those dependencies and just update that over here for us. So when do we need to do that, just to make sure? Okay. Add the following code at the end of the file. Okay, we will add the dependencies later, but let's just add all the code that we need. So this is okay. So this is the main block of code. It's a bit lengthy and it might be a little bit complex for anyone, so don't get overwhelmed. All it's doing is just checking. So this is what's checking the current user state. So for example, if you're a new user, you kind of just check the application's current state, you read the email address, and you just check if they're currently logged in or not. So once we demo the app, it'll kind of make more sense once you see it happening. But for example, it was something that's easy to explain. So here, for example, when you're signing with an email address, there's going to be two text boxes where you provide your email and then your password. Once you add those, it's going to call a function that's synchronous, so it's kind of waiting something. That's just going to check. That's just going to call your Firebase authentication. So it's going to read the keys. That way it knows which Firebase backend to read it from. From there, it's just going to verify that that email and password is actually an existing one. If it is an existing one, it directly logs in. If it isn't, it's going to open up a different flow, which is to set up a new user and then add those credentials to the database. If you're kind of curious to know more about how this works, there's a lot of explanations in this particular documentation file. So if it does look overwhelming, that's where you can learn, because it's pretty much the same thing every time. So whatever you need, you can just find it from here. All right, so from there, okay, you can see, so the code isn't complete. The code, the user starts it as an unauthenticated state, because every time let's say you open up like Facebook or something, unless you're already signed in, it's directly going to log you in, right? But if you're a new user, it's going to show you like a sign up button or sign in if you have an existing account. But the same thing is going to happen with this app. From there, the app will show the form requesting the user's email address, depending on where that email address is on the file. So that is checking if the email actually exists in the backend service, which is Firebase Auth. If it isn't, it's going to request them to create a new account. Otherwise, just directly log in that person if they enter a correct password. The app also does that. Let's just add this before I forget. So this is extremely important. So add that to the bottom. And then to our main file. Again, there are errors, but we need to run like Flutter pub get to just update our dependencies. We'll do that towards the end. Okay. So from there, we've added the code. Then integrating authentication and validation. So in this section, wire the application state into the app initialization, add the authentication flow into the homepage, update the main entry point to integrate application state via the provider package. All right, so let's just copy. Okay, just copy this. And replace the runout function here. And okay, that's fine. Then replace the homepage build method with the new one. So remember that we needed a button, the RSVP button. This is kind of just getting all those widgets from the header file. I'll show that in a minute. But then from there, it's kind of setting it up so once the button is clicked, it kind of gets the current email address and checks the login state. This is maintained by the Firebase Authentication package, so that's something you don't have to worry about. But from there, you're kind of passing it to that, and the Firebase Auth package will handle all of that stuff. So let's just replace the home page widget. Replace that. There's a bunch of errors, that's fine. Okay, that should be it. And then from there, okay, now we can finally fix our dependencies. So previously we added the imports, so while the editor can perform this task, let's understand how to manually import the libraries from the command line. So open a new terminal window, you can do that. You can also press Ctrl-J. That should open it. Nobody has it open. You can just extend that. Just open up a new one. So let's first import Firebase core. So this is just getting the Firebase dependencies. Let's just like that, paste and enter. Give that a minute. So as you can see, it's kind of updated dependencies. It's automatically running the get function. Once that's done, let's open up the YAML file. And as you can see, close that file. As you can see, it's automatically gotten that dependency and added for us. There's actually easier ways to do this with extensions, but this is typically how you go about doing it. Let's close that again. So let's add the remaining two. So we need to add Firebase Auth. It's getting the Auth package and setting it up. We fill those dependencies. And as you can see, most of the errors are gone. One block left. Provider get. And that should fix it. There you go. That's one error. Okay, it's a constant. Oh, okay, it's just okay. So it assumes the home page widget is a constant, so we can either just make this a constant widget. That should fix that, or just remove the constant from here. That should be fine. It's not a big deal. From there, what else we need? Okay, so now we can run the app. So because we made a lot of changes, and the changes that we made are kind of checking different states, we need to not just kind of close the web server that we kind of started and just redo it again. I'll just press Ctrl-C, that should kind of close it. And I'll run the FWR command again to restart the server. Just wait for that to load. It's taking its time. Okay, finally. So I'll just do a hot reload just to ensure that everything is set up correctly. Come back to our app. I think you can see. To refresh it. Oh, I didn't realize they can't see the app. Okay, my mistake. Kind of put it in a different tab. Okay, this is the app. It was okay. That's fine. I made it into a different window because it was because of the dimensions, but it's fine. Okay. So as you can see, we can. Oh, it's in the bottom left. Susie, can you move the camera to the right side, please? CSK? Okay, that's fine. I'll do this. Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. So if you can see the RSVP button, so that wasn't there before, but now that we've added and we've changed the widget code, we're kind of getting that from that widgets class. So now this is kind of like how we can sign up. So we press it. You can see that it's asking us to give an email. As an example, I'm just going to use flutter@gmail.com. Click next. So you can see, because we're a new user, we can just give it a name. So let's Flutter and give a password. So I'm just going to put password as password. From there, I'm just going to press save. And that's kind of sent those credentials to the database using Firebase Auth and kind of stored it there. So now our current state is that we've logged in. That's why it's showing us the logout button. Again, the design UI for this is already done for us. It's part of the starter code, so we don't need to really worry about that. So if I open up, okay. All right, so if I just realized that because I'm in a new tab. Oh, okay, that's fine. From there, I am going to, if I just go to the authentication, so now we opened up our Firebase portal. You can see that we logged in with a new user and that person has been registered here. So if I go back, and you can see the date that we signed, so we created the account and the time that we signed in, because we did it now. That's already happened here. So from there, that's what they want us to do. And you can see the same way we updated it on our backend. From there, that's it. We've just basically completed the app. Just check the progress. But just to show you that it's actually maintaining state, I'm going to open the app and just click log out. Could you move the image, please? My please. CSK. I did this. Okay, from there you can just enter your email. So flutter@gmail.com. Oh, there you go. So click next. Instead of asking us to give a name like previously, because we've already kind of registered on our backend, as you can see over here, it's just directly asking us to give the password, which was password. And yeah, we've logged in, and now it's pretty much asking us to log out again. So that's how we've set up the flow. And yeah, that's it for the app. I'll hand it over now to Fahim.
Okay, so I'll take it over from here for the dot functions framework, and yeah, I guess let's just dive into it. So for this, we're gonna make a backend and a very simple front end to just show how the Google Cloud backend service runs. We'll also be creating a proxy server so that we route the HTTP requests and the HTTP yeah, basically all the requests. So they'll be running through the proxy, which would be, in our case, like it would go through, and it'll act like an intermediary between the user and the backend service. And in case there's any issues, it can be avoided. One sec. Right. So the dot functions framework is basically like it allows you to write lightweight serverless functions in Dart, and this can be deployed to the Google Cloud directly. And this is very helpful to create apps that require you to send say API requests, or like just create a backend server to facilitate all your data flow. And what we'll be learning in this is how to create a Flutter app that looks natural on iOS, Android, and the web. We'll have the basic structure of a Flutter app and the basics of Dart functions framework. And we'll also learn how to use the hot reload function for a quicker development cycle. The prerequisites here are just Flutter and Dart. You just need to know the basics on these. And what we'll create is essentially something like this. It's a very simple UI, but the main focus of this is to understand the Dart functions framework and how we're going to link our main application to a backend framework like this. So the setup. Okay, read the instructions. Labs are timed. Start lab, hands-on lab. Real cloud environment. Okay, so what we're going to do is basically it's going to be very close to usage in real life. So in your real work field, you would be using something very similar to set up a backend service and to get your application running and to use that backend service. Okay. All right, so it's asking us to create an incognito window, which I have here already opened up, and start lab. We'll get the credentials. Right, so let's start the lab. Again, this has been spoken about earlier as well. I think even Vishan mentioned it. And so you can just log in to, okay, you can just log in and register, and this is a monthly renewing thing, and you can just use your subscription to log in instead of having to pay for the subscription. And here we go. So let's start, and let's create a backend service. So we can either run this locally or remotely using Cloud Run. So this is what we're going to use in the lab today. And so incognito browser is opened, combination credentials and the GCP project ID, it's given. Right. Google console. Let's copy this. And let's change this to English. And combination, so we will get the username from here, copy, paste, next. And the password is this, paste, and next. Accept. All right. So this is our Google Cloud platform where we can manage all the APIs and whatever HTTP requests we're sending to our backend service. And right, the country I'm in. Okay, I agree to the conditions. Okay, continue. Right, so now we need to open up the Cloud Shell, which you can open from here. And it should load up in the bottom of your screen. Yeah, you can click on this hamburger icon to minimize your menu, and you can get a full screen, a full window or stretch of the terminal for you, the Cloud Shell. And okay, continue. So we have a few setup commands here that are listed in order. All we have to do is just copy paste them into the shell, and this will create our Cloud Run service. Okay, so I'll copy this, paste, enter. Qwiklabs is requesting your credentials to make a GCP API call. Right. So API calls would be made to like fetch requests and fetch data from your backend service. So this needs to be authorized. Error. You don't currently have an active account selected. Right. Okay. Okay, so am I signed in? I am signed in. Okay, wonder why it's not working. Okay, it's finished successfully, and there was some error. Probably just run the command again if that happens. If not, I think you can just do your authorization. You can sign in again on an incognito window and try this again, so it should work. Set the cloud region, so again copy and paste. So we set the cloud region to US and central US 1. So that's a region code. An updated property. Next, the git clone. Okay, so what we'll do again is clone the function, the framework repository directly from Git, and we won't need to write the code for this on our own. Right, so resolving, and it's done. Let's create a .yaml file for the cloud. So it's nano. Nano is an internal shell command that's used to create a file. So yeah, that's a new file created, and this is the UI that you'll see inside your shell. Okay, so now in your cloud build, yeah, .yaml file, these are the steps needed for your it's a Docker basically, and Docker is like a folder that's created on the cloud service, and here you can just send in your commands, and this would follow these steps to create your backend service and your build and your push. So the build would create that Docker, and the push would send would help you send in fetch requests. So yeah, exit, so control X, then control, then Y for yes, modified buffer, save it, and file name to write, cloudbuild.yaml, and enter. Right, so that's done. We edited the file using Nano and build the image. Now to build the image, all we'll have to do is in the shell terminal, copy and paste this. So gcloud build submit config cloud build.yaml. That's it. So this is going to configure our file, and okay, let's do that. All right. So let's try to follow what it's doing, so I can explain it a little better. Yeah, so here you can see it created this service, this backend service, and you can see the logs available at this URL, but I don't think it's needed to go through that much of a detail. All it's doing right now is just creating a backend service, and it's downloading an image of that service so we can use it, and right, a lot of internal tasks for us to complete, and it's building the backend service. Okay. Okay. This could take a while, so we just need to let it run. And okay, succeeded. Run dot compile. So it's trying to compile the dot code. Okay. So yeah, by the time it takes to complete this, I'll let you all know that we have had our previous sessions and recorded on YouTube, our YouTube channel. You can all visit the channel there, leave a like, subscribe, and watch our previous videos to explain the basics of Flutter. In case you're not very familiar with all that's happening right now, you can watch them. and watch them and send in your questions to our LinkedIn or our Instagram, or even tweet. You can even tweet us, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Right. So now that this is done, we need to. Yeah, we built the image, so now we have to deploy the Cloud Run service. So now that everything is created, we actually have to deploy it so that it's visible to us when we have to use it. So run deploy backend service, and this is the image, platform managed. Okay, the region is specified. Unauthenticated access is given. So this is going to make it easier for us, but I think in the future, if you need to make any changes to this, in the real world scenario, this could be edited to say authenticated. So this would require you to send in your username and login details, basically your credentials, to access this backend server. Okay, it's deploying, creating a policy. So what we're essentially doing here is that after creating this backend service, we'll have to link it to get access to it. So this is what's going to happen here. The backend endpoint. This command will allow us to get access to the deployed service, and we can use it. Okay, it's taking a while. Done. Okay, serving 100% of the traffic, so it's working perfectly. All right, so now this will take care of deploying, routing the traffic, and it'll set up a policy so you can fetch and request for. You can send and fetch both like data to this backend service. Right. So the endpoint is what we have to do now, right? Yeah, the endpoint. So we have to get the endpoint. Let's paste that here. Enter. I think it's done. Didn't give any confirmation on this. So let's try running it again. Right. Okay. And test the backend service. So now let's see. We'll try to give a post request, and with the header as the content type application/JSON, and we'll give it a JSON. We'll just give it a value here, like a JSON file, and let's see if it works. If it does, we should get a header back. We'll get a request back, and we'll see if it's actually doing something. There we go. So now we have the HTTP response that says it gives a 200 response, which means okay. And the frame options is same as origin. Content type is a JSON file. Okay, that's your usual. This is basically a packet. That's a HTTP request. And the content length given, and this is the date and time in Greenwich Meridian time. And we have, this name is, okay, so this is a hello in some language. And I think it's randomized here to give a different language. And right now, I don't know what language it's set to. But yeah, we have a backend service to interact with Google Cloud. However, as we use multiple hosts, we need a proxy to add the correct cause headers. So yeah, what we'll have to do now is create a proxy that will route the requests to that backend service in case there are multiple hosts, right? So right now, this will only work for one host. right? So the CORS is basically a cross-origin resource sharing, and yeah, so the scripts are sourced from the same origin. So if you want to request something from the same cloud or the same space in the cloud, you'll have to use this header. And notice in the above response message, the X-frame option, same origin. Okay, so this, as I mentioned here, is the same origin. So we'll probably have some change to this in the next section. Right, so now let's create a proxy service. So now a proxy server is basically like an intermediary between the client requesting a resource and the server providing that resource. So that's like I would say like a gate, right, between the outside and the inside. So this will help in you know this will help again to get scripts. Sorry. Yeah, so we'll have multiple requests to this backend framework that we've created. Right, the proxy service will be used to update the header associated with HTTP response. Okay, so now let's deploy a backend proxy as a cloud run service and set the endpoint as the backend service. So what's going to happen is this is going to, so as you can see the diagram here, this would be an intermediary, and this would have a at the endpoint set to the backend service we created. So to route the message through the proxy service and into the backend service. Let's copy this and deploy the backend proxy using UL central. Okay, right. Nothing much to explain there. It's just general commands. It's going to deploy the backend proxy. Another one that is going to be okay. Right. This happened a little quicker because the backend is already created. All we have to do is just route it, create an intermediary that will route the message through it and send it to the backend service. Backend endpoint. So let's copy this. Again, it's a very similar process as what we've seen in the previous few steps. And let's test it. Right. So we're going to send in a JSON request, and here we can see like another language here that says hello. I'm assuming it says hello, but yeah, as you can see here, this sample output also says hello. So yeah, I think it's working perfectly. It's getting a 200 request, 200 response. Sorry, that's an OK, and the X powered by. So as you can see here, before this was, oh, sorry. X-frame options, I don't think that's here. Okay, yeah, this is a different. It's a packet that you've received from the backend, and yeah, seems like it's fine. The proxy communicates directly with the backend service and is used to add a wildcard header to the origin. With this action, we can consume the payload from any location. Right. So in the next section, let's create a Flutter front-end application to consume the output from this backend service. So this now, the output that you see here, this would now be taken into the. We'll actually try to make use of this. So now this would be sending an API. Sorry, this would be sending a request, right? So once we get this as a response, we'll be using this to display it in our application. Okay. Okay, so now we'll be using Flutter editor, and I'll have to go all the way back up. Copy Flutter editor, new tab, paste, continue. Right. So just ignore that previous error. If you have any firewalls or any extensions on your browser, or even if your browser has a few inbuilt warnings, this would prompt it. Just click on the advanced button as I did and say continue. Here. So copy the Flutter editor and paste the Flutter editor IP address. Oh, sorry, it's had to be in an incognito browser. So let's paste that again. This is incognito, enter. And welcome to code server. So usually on an incognito server, this wouldn't give a warning as it did on my normal browser. So paste, and the browser will warn you. Yeah, so if it does, just click on the advanced button. Request a password. So the password will be password01. Click enter. Okay. So now this is very similar to VS Code, and if you've ever used VS Code, you'll see that this is literally an online version of it. So what we'll be doing now is use the extensions that are required here. So Flutter extension and the Dart language extension. So the extensions icon is this one. If you click on this and you search for the installed extensions, you can see that using this URL and the IP address, we can actually see everything is already done for us. All we have to do is reload, and yeah, reload as they've mentioned, and the extensions will be enabled. Right. So again, the code has already been given to us on a GitHub repository. So all we'll have to do is clone it, and we'll go to this file, and then go to sorry, where is it? Source control button. Yeah, so we'll need this instead. We'll need the source control button, and we say clone repository, right? And the URL is given to you on the lab. So we'll copy and paste and clone from URL, enter. They want us to save it in the home/Flutter folder, so we'll just do that and say OK. I'd like to open the clone repository. They want us to close it, so fine. Let's close it. Let's not open it yet. Clone repository. So a repository contains multiple Flutter applications. Opening a specific folder can be easier to manage the code base. Full folder contents of the clone repository. Select open. Okay. Has now been cloned into the editor. In the next section, access the source code and explore the Flutter application. So once that's done, the Explorer button is here. We'll have to open the folder, home/Flutter, and we'll say OK. Right, so actually we can even navigate directly to this folder. So we can say file, open folder, and we can give it the path. Okay, because all we need now is a front end, and they've specified the path exactly to that folder, so we don't need to see most of the other backend stuff. It's already been created for us. And okay, updated the code directory, so we'll say get packages, right? This is the same as running the pub.get command in your terminals to get all the extensions. You say okay, we say yes for this, and it's going to do a pub get. Okay, this is fine. Once this is done, we can head on to exploring the code. Yes, that's done. Now in the pubspec.yaml file, we can see all the dependencies used. So here, because we're sending HTTP requests, we'll be using this HTTP dependency. And there's a provider as well that you can Google more about this on the pub.dev website, where you see a list of all the extensions, and you can dependencies, where you can see a list of all the dependencies and get more information on all of them. Right. So now the main file would be in library. So this is a very small. This is a very. Sorry, let me just rearrange everything. Yeah. So this is a very small piece of code where you can see that it's just building a very minimal app that just something like we saw earlier in the photo here. It will create an app like this with just enter with a prompt to enter your name, and it'll send a message in the bottom of the screen that would give you the HTTP response. Let's continue to where we stopped. For the sorter app, yeah, we did that. Explore main config. So config dot. So this will have all the environment settings, which would be so the future over here. This would basically just take in all the information, process it, and this would return a future of a config, which is basically like multi-threading. So it would give a async response, and you can run multiple requests like this parallelly, so that nothing blocks or nothing ends up blocking your application. Because usually, what would happen if this wasn't asynchronous is that it would sort of have a lag in the middle where you would notice that until a response is loaded, you will not be allowed to send another request. Right. So services/API. Let's check this out as well. API dot. This contains post. Yeah, the post request would be handled by this file. The greeting will be sent here. This is basically the parsing that will happen from the JSON that will be sent in as a response, and this would get this would just get the string from that JSON response. Request. This will send the request, and so this checks if the status code is okay for that for the request that's sent. That is, if it is received the packet or the response correctly from the backend service, then you get the OK status, and this would parse the JSON code and give you the string and the string response. If it doesn't happen, then there will be an error that will be thrown on, and it will be displayed on your application. Right, so the public pub/spec.yaml file I've already discussed, and let's go to the front-end service. Okay, consume data from the backend service. So what we're doing now is just creating an interface so that the user can input some data, and the backend service can return something to the person. So let's click on the application menu, right, in terminal. We can just do this instead. So we have a new terminal. Front-end assets. Okay, we need this file, so we'll copy it. Right, so we're already in the front-end folder, so we don't really need to add this to our file path anymore. All we'll have to do is just give this file path, which I've copied already. So if I paste this, right. So what happened here is that Control V doesn't work on this terminal, on the VS Code online VS Code terminal, or you'll have to right-click it to paste your command. So press enter, and we've copied the file, the backend proxy URL from the Google Run console. So Google Run console was here. We will have to okay, let's just open this and navigate. No, this is logged into mine, so I'll copy this and create one on the incognito window. Okay. Interesting. Let's see if I can see it from here. Cloud Run, yeah, we have it here. So all you have to do is click on the hamburger icon on the top left and navigate to this, the Cloud Run page. So once we have the backend proxy, we'll have to copy it. Let me just minimize this. Scroll here, deployed by. Okay, so this is done. The URL isn't showing up. Okay, backend proxy. Yeah, here it is. So we copy this, right? And we navigate to the assets config prod.json file. That would be here. The assets prod.json. Right, and we replace the value of greeting URL with this. Yeah, that's done. Update enables front-end application to communicate with the backends. Yeah, so this is essentially where we give the URL to send and receive API requests. Oh, sorry, to send the API request and receive the data back from the backend service. And editing this would now automatically, the app will automatically figure out that, this is the link that it has to navigate to initialize the application. So this would just make a link to the backend service. Run the Flutter application to interact with the backend. Let's do that now. Ensure the directory is set to .flutter full stack demo frontend. So .flutter full stack demo / frontend. The directory is set. Run the browser. Tell Flutter to use the browser on a specific port. So to initialize the web server and to have the web server running correctly, we'll have to follow these steps, right? And we will do that here now. So let's copy this and we'll run the Flutter server on this port as specified. So again, it has to be right-clicked. So 8082 is the port that we'll run this on. Waiting for connection. And once that's done, we should get a message like this. The first time connections are more or less like they take a lot of time because it's the first time it's connecting to a backend service and it has to recognize the path it needs to take to get to it. So the first time setups they take some time, but as you saw in the previous setup as well, when we had to set up the backend service, it didn't take too long. Sorry, the backend service took a long time, but then the backend proxy didn't take too long. So yeah, this is done. Right, so copy the Flutter device. We'll need the link. Scroll all the way up. Copy the device and down to that. Right, on incognito window, we'll paste this and we'll get the Flutter device showing up here. Hopefully stuff loads inside it. We will probably have to reload this, so hot restart. There we go. We can even hot reload, which is done by capital R. Yeah, so both work the same way. And now that we have this application now, we can just say, let's give my name, say Fahim, submit. Bonjour Fahim is the response we get from the backend service. Let's type something else. Let's say Tony. Konnichiwa, Tony. And then we have Vishan. Konnichiwa, Vishan. Let's type in Benjamin, who was our GDSC lead. and Xiao Benjamin. So this works pretty. It's a pretty straightforward application. This is just getting the name and sending a request to the backend service that we created, and the response would come, as a pop-up bar in the bottom of the screen here, as we saw in the terminal here. So basically, this response, the JSON response, is parsed into a string and shown in your application like that. So let's check our progress, and it's done. Right, so basically now in this lab, we've learned to install the Flutter and Dart extensions on a online VS Code online VS Code and develop a backend service using Cloud Run, which was done over here. So all these terminal commands that we use to get everything set up for Cloud Run, that is the backend service and the proxy, both are done using this Cloud Shell terminal. We use the hot reload feature, and we tested the code updates on the web device. So yeah, that's basically it. We just did a reload and we checked that everything's working and everything is fine. Okay, so this was the last lab in the quest for Flutter development, and can we have Vishan as well join the call now? Hello, CSK, can we have Vishan as well in the call? Let's end the session and open it up to questions. Hello, CSK, you there?
Oh, okay, there we go.
Yeah. So yeah, that was it. The 2 labs done for the Flutter Quest, and so far these are our sessions for the Flutter development. We will be holding sessions later on, maybe in the future, to explain and teach Flutter from the ground up. So not just the labs, but our versions of what we have done in the past, and showing you examples of a few applications that we've created. And yeah, we can open the floor to questions now if anyone has any.
We also want to just say, for anyone who's been doing it along with us, or probably just watching the recordings back, if you have done all the labs, congratulations. You've earned yourself a badge. You can proudly put that on your public profile, and you can add that link to your CV. Yeah, unlike Fahim said, we will plan to demo our own apps, something that we built from the ground up. So that'll be more of a live demo kind of thing. Hopefully soon. We hope you enjoyed this series, whether you attended live or you're watching it live. Thank you.
Yeah, and those of you who have had friends who were not available during this time and couldn't watch it, just let them know that this would be up on our YouTube channel, and watch it anytime. Just like, subscribe, and share it. So spread the word. Get your friends to learn Flutter. Right, I don't see questions coming up. Just a reminder again that we would answer questions that you would leave on our Instagram or our Twitter, even our LinkedIn. So any questions are welcome. Even after the session, we'll try to reply to you as fast as we possibly can. And well, yeah.
Yeah, just feel free to start discussions in our Teams call. No, Teams chat. Will be the best place.
Right, the Teams places. Yeah, I forgot about the Teams channel. Yeah, we can have questions on the Teams channel. So expect a moderately quick response there. Okay, I think we can wrap it up since we aren't receiving a lot of questions. We'll wait for the ones we get on Teams, and well, yeah, this has been the Flutter Development Quest and the last lab in the series. So we'll see you all in a bit.
Stay tuned for more series to come, not just from us, but other members of the core team. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, everybody.